Hey there, and welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're cracking open a really interesting stack of sources, excerpts from the YOJANA April 2025 magazine. It's a collection that takes us across, well, a fascinating landscape, touching on everything from skilling India's massive workforce and the digital transformation sweeping the nation to the nitty-gritty of investment, manufacturing, finance, and even something as, foundational as preserving tribal culture and customary law.
That's right. And what's particularly insightful about this material, I think, is that it doesn't just present these topics in isolation, it implicitly connects them, positioning them as crucial interlocking pillars supporting India's ambitious journey towards the Viksit Bharat at 2047 vision. The idea of a developed India by its 100th year of independence.
Right.
The goal for us today is to synthesize these diverse areas, to really see how they interact and what is for you, the listener, as you try to grasp this complex moving picture.
Exactly. So consider this our mission: to go through these sources and highlight the most significant points, pull out some surprising facts that might make you look twice, and, most importantly, draw out the connections that help make sense of the big picture. Think of this as your shortcut to being well-informed on what these sources have to say about India's path forward. Okay, let's unpack this by starting with the human element, the foundational effort to skill India's workforce. The source material puts a lot of emphasis on the Skill India mission. To set the scene, what was the starting point for this back in 2015?
Well, the sources framed the launch of the National Skill Development Mission, the Skill India mission, in 2015 as a really pivotal moment. Before that, while there were skilling programs, they were often quite fragmented across different ministries, different departments. It was a bit messy. The core issue they were trying to address was the significant mismatch. Well, the gap between the skills that young people entering the workforce possessed and the actual demands of industries and the economy.
The classic skills gap.
Precisely. So 2015 marked a conscious effort to move towards a more structured, scalable, and sustainable approach to human capital development across the entire country, recognizing its centrality, to national development.
And when we talk about scale, how big has this effort actually grown? The aspiration mentioned is quite grand to be the skill capital of the world. That's a huge ambition.
It is a massive ambition, absolutely. And the scale of the effort is indeed vast. According to data highlighted in the source material from the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, the MSDE, over 5 core individuals, that's more than 50 million people, have been trained under various schemes since the mission's inception in 2015.
50 million, wow.
That number alone gives you a sense of the sheer reach they're aiming for. The idea isn't just to train people, but to equip a workforce that can propel India towards becoming a leading global economic power, capable of meeting both domestic and international skill demands. And what's fascinating here is understanding the deeper purpose behind this massive push beyond just sort of providing individual job skills. The sources explicitly link skilling to broader national frameworks. It's seen as absolutely essential for achieving Atmanirbhar Bharat.
The self-reliant India vision.
Exactly. And its position as a foundational pillar for the overarching goal of Viksit Bharat at 2047, the dream of a developed India by its 100th anniversary. So skilling isn't just a standalone social program, it's embedded as a core economic and developmental strategy. It's really fundamental to the plan.
And to build something this large, you need a strong foundation, right? What institutional reforms and policy integrations were put in place early on to make this work?
Exactly. You can't build on shaky ground. The foundation building involves significant institutional changes. The Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, MSDE, was actually created in 2014. That was a crucial first step. It brought together more than 20 previously fragmented skill development programs and missions under one single ministry.
Consolidation. Makes sense.
Right. Aiming for better coordination, better resource allocation. Then, the National Skill Development Mission was formally launched in 2015. That served as the operational framework to implement and scale up training initiatives in a more structured, coordinated way.
Okay, so the structure was put in place. What about integrating it with policy, education, for instance?
Building on that institutional base, policy integration was critical, and the source highlights key initiatives here. The National Education Policy, NEP 2020, is a major component. It introduced vocational integration into the formal education system starting as early as grade 6.
Grade 6, that's quite early.
It is. Promoting multidisciplinary learning where skill education is given academic credit. This helps break down the traditional stigma, associated with vocational training and creates early exposure. Further strengthening this is the National Credit Framework, NCRF, introduced in 2023. This framework facilitates, well, seamless mobility between formal education tracks and vocational or skill training pathways.
So easier to move between academic and vocational.
Exactly. It incorporated concepts like the Academic Bank of Credits, ABC, allowing students to earn and transfer credits from skill programs. It also established academic equivalency, meaning credentials obtained through ITIs, the Industrial Training Institutes, can now be recognized and linked to formal degree programs, bridging that traditional divide.
That integration across education streams sounds absolutely vital, creating clear pathways, making sure vocational training isn't a dead end, but a stepping stone. Now, how does this connect more directly to the actual needs of businesses and industries? The sources mentioned strengthening industry connect quite a bit.
Yes, that connection to industry is paramount because the skills taught must be relevant to the jobs available, right? It's no good training people for jobs that don't exist. The sources detail significant efforts here. The mission has reportedly conducted over 100 consultations with industry stakeholders, and this directly fed into revising training curricula to ensure they align with current market demands and technological advancements.
So industries helping shape the training.
Precisely. They also introduced and scaled up initiatives like the Dual System of Training, DST, within ITIs. This model involves students spending part of their training time in the institution and part of it gaining hands-on experience in an actual industry setting, like an apprenticeship almost. They also mentioned FlexiMOVs, flexible memorandums of understanding, which allow for customized training programs developed in partnership with specific industries to meet their unique skill requirements.
And what about apprenticeships themselves? That seems like a very direct way to get on-the-job training and link it to future employment.
Apprenticeships have been a major area of focus, absolutely, and the sources indicate a significant revamp of the system. The National Apprenticeship Promotion Scheme, NAPS, has been particularly highlighted for its success. It has resulted in over 42 lakh, that's 4.2 million apprentices, being trained across more than 50,000 establishments nationwide.
4.2 million apprentices. That's substantial.
It is, and a key detail mentioned is the increased transparency and efficiency brought by the use of direct benefit transfer, DBT, for dispersing apprenticeship stipends directly to the apprentices' accounts, cutting out middlemen, reducing delays.
The sources also talk about something called the Accelerated Employment Development Program, AEDP. That sounds like it's trying to move things even faster in specific areas. What's that about?
Right, the AEDP. It's specifically designed to fast-track skilling in identified high-growth and future-oriented sectors where there's immediate demand. Think cutting-edge tech. It involves direct partnerships with major global technology companies, the source names, giants like Samsung, Dassault Systems, IBM, and Microsoft.
Teaming up with the big players.
Exactly. These collaborations have led to the co-development of highly specialized training modules, ensuring that individuals are trained on the latest technologies and platforms directly relevant to jobs in these rapidly expanding fields. It's a very targeted, industry-led approach, meeting specific needs quickly. What's fascinating here is how deeply technology is embedded not just in the content of the skilling, but in the delivery itself, and how this connects to India's global ambition. The digital shift is a crucial enabler.
How so?
Well, the Skill India Digital Hub, SIDH, is a central platform mentioned. It's designed to offer a range of services digitally. This includes things like AI and VR-powered learning modules for more immersive training.
Learning in virtual reality.
Potentially, yes. Also, personalized career mapping based on individual skills and market demand, and a digital skill card that provides verifiable portable credentials. It also offers real-time analytics on skill uptake, program effectiveness, employability outcomes, which is vital for policymakers to make data-driven decisions and quickly adapt programs. See what's working and what's not.
That data aspect sounds crucial for steering such a massive ship. And the focus is very much on skilling people in emerging technologies, right? I imagine that's key for that skill capital of the world ambition.
Absolutely. There's a clear strategic focus on skilling the workforce in emerging tech domains. This includes artificial intelligence, AI, Internet of Things, IoT, electric vehicles, EVs, additive manufacturing, the whole gamut of future tech. They've formed significant partnerships with global tech leaders like Google, Microsoft, and NVIDIA, specifically to enhance access to AI skilling, recognizing its transformative potential across sectors. This is explicitly about preparing the workforce for the jobs of tomorrow and ensuring India has the talent pool needed for a digital-first economy. And this raises an important question. How does all this effort in skilling specifically prepare India for the global stage and enable its participation in global value chains? The source highlights intentional internationalization efforts within the Skill India mission.
How are they doing that?
Well, a 2023 study mentioned in the material identified 3.7 million potential jobs across 16 countries where there's a recognized demand for Indian skilled labor. Focus countries for these efforts include Japan, Germany, the UAE, Israel, and Australia, among others. To facilitate this global mobility and ensure Indian workers meet international standards, they've established 30 Skill India International Centers, SIICs.
SIICs, what do they do?
They provide specialized training, including foreign language proficiency, crucial cross-cultural soft skills, and globally recognized certifications aligned with international standards ISO codes specifically. And a tangible indicator of this progress, something quite striking, is India's dramatic improvement in the world skills rankings. Climbed from 39th position back in 2011 to an impressive 13th position in the 2024 competition.
13th. That's a huge jump. Really underscores the progress and the focus on quality.
Yeah.
How is all of this being funded? It must cost a fortune. And who specifically is benefiting, especially beyond the main cities? Is it reaching rural areas, traditional crafts?
Funding is definitely a critical piece, and the budgetary commitment is substantial, as you'd expect. The union budget for 2024-25 allocated 18,800 crore to the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, with specific provisions for upgrading 1,000 industrial training institutes, ITIs, across the country and establishing 5 national centers of excellence in specialized areas.
So direct government funding.
Yeah.
But are there other ways?
Yes, beyond direct budgetary allocations, they're leveraging innovative financing tools mentioned in the source. This includes skill loans to make course access more affordable for individuals, skill impact bonds, which are an outcome-based financing mechanism.
Outcome-based, how does that work?
Essentially, investors fund the training, and the government pays back the investors, potentially with a return, only if certain pre-agreed outcomes, like job placement rates, are achieved. It incentivizes effectiveness. And they also mention skill vouchers, which give learners more flexibility in choosing training providers based on their needs. There's also a strong emphasis on scheme convergence, trying to integrate various skill development initiatives. The source mentions that 38 central government schemes and 133 state government schemes related to skilling have been integrated onto the Skill India Digital Hub, the SIDH platform.
Bringing it all together digitally.
Exactly. Aiming for unified monitoring, better resource allocation, and eliminating duplication. And crucially, there's a focused effort on reviving and promoting traditional and rural skills, ensuring inclusion. This isn't just about high-tech jobs. The PM Vishwakarma scheme, for example, supports 18 traditional trades, think carpentry, blacksmithing, pottery. It provides training, modern toolkits, collateral-free loans, and market linkages to artisans.
Supporting traditional craftspeople, that's important too.
Absolutely. The Craftsman Training Scheme is actively integrating heritage crafts like basoli painting from Jammu and Kashmir, shawl weaving, hand embroidery, paper mache, often in collaboration with state governments. Furthermore, specific programs under the PMJN scheme for particularly vulnerable tribal groups and the YOJANA, focusing on value addition to forest produce, are empowering tribal communities and rural entrepreneurs through skilling and market support, often implemented via institutions like NASBB.
That truly sounds like a massive layered effort, trying to cover everything from cutting-edge AI skills to preserving traditional heritage crafts and ensuring the programs reach deep into rural and tribal areas. Given this enormous undertaking, what challenges are identified in the source material? It can't all be smooth sailing. And what does the roadmap for the future look like?
No, definitely not smooth sailing. And the source is quite candid about the challenges that still need to be addressed. One significant challenge is fragmented delivery, despite that initial consolidation effort. It's still complex. The suggested way forward is the full operationalization of the Skill India Digital Hub, SIDH, to serve as a truly unified platform for discovery, delivery, and monitoring of all skilling programs.
A single point of access.
Ideally.
Oh.
There's also a recognized urban-rural divide in access to quality training and infrastructure. They aim to address this by strengthening rural skill development centers and leveraging digital delivery via SIBH to reach remote areas. Low post-training employability is another concern mentioned. You train someone, but do they get a job?
Right, the outcome matters.
Exactly. The roadmap intends to tackle this by significantly boosting apprenticeship programs and promoting more on-the-job learning opportunities. Perception issues around vocational training, where it's sometimes seen as, secondary to academic degrees, persist. These are being addressed through targeted national campaigns to make skilling aspirational and highlight successful career pathways. Finally, there's the challenge of certification mismatch with global standards. The roadmap points towards global benchmarking of India's National Skills Qualification Framework, NSQF, to ensure portability and international recognition of Indian credentials.
Making Indian qualifications count globally.
Precisely, and the policy recommendations outlined in the source for the future are quite forward-thinking. They suggest considering skilling as a fundamental right and potentially placing it on the concurrent list of the Constitution.
Wow, elevating it constitutionally.
That's the suggestion mentioned, giving both central and state governments clear mandates. There's a strong emphasis on linking skilling much more closely with the MSME sector, micro, small, and medium enterprises, and the burgeoning gig economy, recognizing that these areas will be major drivers of future employment growth. They also advocate for the expansion of skill universities with a focus on outcome-based curricula directly aligned with industry needs. What's fascinating here is the clear emphasis on a data-driven, dynamic approach to policy.
Using data to steer the ship, as you mentioned.
Yes. MSDE, in collaboration with research bodies like NCAER, has conducted specific sectoral skill gap analyses. They are integrating skill demand and supply data with surveys from the Ministry of Statistics, MOST-PI, and the Ministry of Labor, MOST-LE, to ensure training supply is aligned with real-time market demand. They're even exploring the use of AI and predictive analytics for job forecasting and designing responsive curricula that anticipate future skill needs.
So it's not just about training people, but making sure that training is constantly updated, relevant, and reaches the right places. Very dynamic. Okay, if skilling is this essential human capital foundation, how does it directly connect to India's ambition in the global economy? Let's move on to how this skilled workforce enables India's push for exports and its role in global value chains, as highlighted in the source. That's a crucial link the source makes, absolutely. It explicitly states that India is at a critical juncture where an export-led growth strategy isn't just an option. It's seen as essential to significantly reshape its economic destiny. Leveraging a rapidly growing digitally skilled workforce, increasing industrial capacity, and becoming a reliable and competitive partner in global value chains, GVCs are seen as fundamental steps for transforming India into a leading export powerhouse and achieving that ambitious $20 trillion economic target envisioned for Viksit Bharat at 2047.
So exports are key to hitting that 2047 target. That's the argument presented. And the source identifies specific strategic areas targeted for this export focus. It's not just about traditional goods anymore. It includes high-growth, future-oriented sectors like green technology and space technology, high-value manufacturing, leveraging infrastructure improvements for logistics efficiency, and, crucially, enabling MSMEs, the small businesses, to participate effectively in global trade. It's a multi-pronged approach, aiming to climb the value chain and diversify the export basket.
Diversification is key. And what are the current trends in India's exports that the source highlights, especially given the global slowdown we've seen?
That's the interesting context, right? The source notes that global merchandise trade growth had slowed down significantly, registering only about 2% growth in the previous year, which is quite sluggish. However, against this backdrop, India's non-petroleum exports showed remarkable resilience in growth, rising by a healthy 7%.
7% against the global 2%. That's strong.
It is strong. And this growth wasn't uniform, but was primarily driven by specific sectors: chemicals, electronics, engineering products, and pharmaceuticals. Here's where it gets really significant, according to the source. Electronics exports saw a dramatic and rapid jump, surging from around USD 11 billion in the financial year 2021 to an estimated USD 26 billion by financial year 2025.
Doubled and then some in just a few years.
A huge increase. The textile sector also saw a rebound with a 7.6% increase. The source attributes these performances to supportive policy measures like production-linked incentives, PLI schemes, and streamlined regulatory frameworks that are making it easier and more profitable to manufacture and export.
So even with global headwinds, India is seeing strong growth in specific targeted sectors. The source also looks at lessons learned from other export-driven economies, right? Countries like China or South Korea.
Yes, it points to the experiences of countries like China, South Korea, and Vietnam, highlighting how export-led growth has been a key driver of their economic prosperity and job creation. The implicit lesson for India, according to the source, is the need to transition further from its traditional reliance on services exports and capital-intensive industries. It needs to more effectively leverage its large labor force by boosting manufacturing and integrating into global supply chains. This is seen as essential to attract multinational corporations, gain technology, and ultimately generate the massive number of jobs needed. The source mentions over 200 million high-quality jobs to absorb the young population entering the workforce. And many of these jobs are expected to be created in export-oriented manufacturing sectors.
So, manufacturing for export as a major job creator. Why is export-led growth specifically highlighted as the path forward for India and its material? What are the core benefits outlined beyond jobs?
Well, beyond the critical employment generation and inclusive development aspect, distributing growth to Tier 23 cities, as mentioned, the source outlines several other compelling arguments. Firstly, participation in global value chains offers significant technological and competitive advantages.
How so?
By integrating into GVCs, Indian manufacturers gain access to new technologies through partnerships. They adopt global best practices in manufacturing and quality, which leads to higher productivity and ultimately enhances their overall international competitiveness. They learn by doing, essentially. Secondly, successful export performance contributes to India's geopolitical soft power. It strengthens economic diplomacy and boosts bilateral trade ties, particularly with key partners like ASEAN nations and the USA.
Trade is diplomacy.
In a way, yes. Finally, emerging sectors like renewables and green energy are highlighted. These are areas where India has the potential not just for domestic growth, but to become a leader in the global energy transition through exports of green technologies and services, capturing a piece of that massive future market.
That paints a powerful picture of the potential benefits. But let's be realistic. What stands out to you regarding the challenges mentioned in the source material that could hinder this ambitious export push?
The sources are quite realistic about the hurdles, definitely. Infrastructure and logistics constraints are consistently highlighted as a major challenge. Despite significant government initiatives like PM Gati Shakti aimed at improving multimodal connectivity, India's logistics cost to GDP ratio remains relatively high compared to global benchmarks.
So moving goods is still expensive.
Relatively, yes. This is due to issues like port congestion, delays in customs clearance, shortage of shipping containers during peak times, and persistent poor last-mile connectivity, especially from manufacturing hubs in the interior to the ports. These inefficiencies directly add to the cost of Indian exports, making them less competitive.
And what about the actual composition of India's export basket? Are there limitations there mentioned?
Yes, limitations in the export portfolio are noted. There's a perceived overdependence on traditional sectors like IT services, petroleum products, which are more about refining imported crude, really, and gems and jewelry. These can be sensitive to global demand fluctuations. Green energy exports, despite the potential, are still seen as underdeveloped compared to established sectors. There's also a point made about a perceived lack of value addition in exports of agriculture and textiles. India often exports raw materials or lower value finished goods rather than climbing higher up the value chain. Think exporting cotton versus exporting high-fashion garments. This limits potential export earnings and global positioning. Then there are external barriers and domestic complexities. The source mentions challenges from global protectionism, other countries imposing trade barriers, various forms of taxation on cross-border trade, and the impact of geopolitical disruptions, citing the Russia-Ukraine war as an example impacting supply chains.
And new hurdles emerging, too.
Yes. New challenges like environmental norms and compliance standards being increasingly imposed by developed countries. These can act as non-tariff barriers, requiring significant adjustments in production processes and certifications for Indian exporters. And specifically for micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs, the constraints are particularly acute. Limited access to affordable export credit, complex financial rules for international trade, lack of awareness about existing government export schemes, and high compliance costs associated with meeting those non-tariff barriers and certification requirements.
It sounds tough for the smaller players.
It can be. The source provides a striking, specific example to illustrate this. Over a 5-year period, U.S. Customs rejected 3,925 Indian shipments, specifically due to sanitary and phytosanitary issues. That highlights the real-world impact of these compliance challenges, particularly for sectors like agriculture and food processing, which are dominated by MSMEs.
That U.S. Customs example really drives home the practical difficulties faced by businesses on the ground. So what specific government initiatives are highlighted in the source material to counter these challenges and give exports a boost? The source outlines several key initiatives aimed directly at these problems. There's the Export Promotion Mission, which has been allocated 2,250 crore. This mission is specifically aimed at enhancing access to export finance, including mechanisms for cross-border factoring of receivables to improve liquidity for exporters, proactively identifying and eliminating non-tariff barriers faced by Indian goods in target markets, and addressing other structural and sectoral bottlenecks that hinder export growth, with a particular focus on supporting MSMEs. So financial help and tackling barriers. What else?
Digital reforms are also seen as crucial for trade facilitation. The source highlights Avara TradeNet as a major initiative. This is envisioned as a unified digital infrastructure for trade documentation and financial transactions. Inspired by advanced systems in places like Singapore and the EU, it aims for real-time monitoring of trade flows, streamlining processes across customs, logistics, and financing.
Making the paperwork digital and faster.
Essentially, yes. The goal is to significantly reduce transaction costs, improve transparency, and speed up the movement of goods, empowering MSMEs and other exporters to navigate global trade more efficiently.
So leveraging technology to make the process smoother. What about the physical infrastructure side? Still important, right?
Absolutely. Infrastructure development remains a priority, specifically aimed at supporting trade. The source mentions efforts to improve air cargo facilities, crucial for high-value and perishable goods. Integration of geospatial data with logistics planning is also being explored to optimize routes and reduce costs. Overall, the focus is on reducing trade-related costs across the board to make Indian exports more competitive globally. And, as we discussed earlier, the skill development and digital empowerment initiatives under the recalibrated Skill India Mission 2025 are explicitly targeting employment generation and export readiness. Training programs tailored for manufacturing sector jobs, digital skills for e-commerce, equipping the workforce with competencies needed for global value chains.
Those are the specific initiatives. What about the broader strategic blueprint outlined in the source for enhancing overall growth and competitiveness in manufacturing and trade? What's the big picture strategy?
The strategy presented is definitely multi-pronged. It involves strengthening trade infrastructure and supply chains, building on existing mega projects like PM Gati Shakti, Haratmala for roads, and Sagarmala for ports to create efficient multimodal connectivity. The source also mentions adopting advanced logistics technologies like AI-based customs systems for faster clearance. There's a significant push towards high-value manufacturing and technology exports, explicitly aiming to diversify the export basket beyond traditional commodities. This means promoting sectors like electronics, solar panels, electric vehicles, and other green technologies, strategically tapping into growing global demand for these future-oriented products.
Moving up the value chain, essentially.
Precisely. Trade agreements are also a key tool. The strategy includes leveraging existing pacts like the India-Australia ECTA and the India-UAE CEPA to gain preferential market access. Additionally, the source mentions actively exploring new trade agreements and market access opportunities in non-traditional regions, Latin America, Africa, Oceania, to diversify export destinations.
And supporting the MSMEs within this strategy.
Empowering MSMEs is absolutely vital, presented as the backbone of manufacturing. This involves integrating various support schemes like ties with programs like RAMP to provide comprehensive support. Providing low-interest export finance specifically tailored for MSMEs is crucial. Enabling global market access via platforms like the Government e-Marketplace, GEM, and promoting automation, robotics, and AI adoption within MSMEs are also seen as key to improving their quality, cost efficiency, and global competitiveness. Expanding production-linked incentives, PLI, schemes is another strategic pillar. The source notes that PLI will be expanded to cover new emerging sectors like precision machinery and advanced chemicals. It also highlights merging Digital India initiatives with the development of smart manufacturing clusters and actively supporting joint ventures with multinational corporations to attract both FDI and advanced technology. Future competitiveness is also heavily reliant on innovation and R&D. A substantial 20,000 crore allocation is mentioned for advancements in crucial areas like AI, semiconductors, and geospatial technologies. The goals here are twofold: equip the youth with future-ready skills and foster robust innovation ecosystems.
And ensuring quality is paramount for global markets, as that U.S. Customs example showed. How is that being addressed strategically?
That falls under reforming regulatory and quality frameworks. This involves establishing robust domestic testing and certification systems that are recognized internationally, signing mutual recognition agreements, MRAs, with trading partners to simplify acceptance of Indian standards, partnering with bodies like the Quality Council of India, QCI, to ensure products meet global benchmarks. Tapping into digital trade and e-commerce is another strategy, promoting seamless cross-border digital payments, integrating Indian sellers into global e-commerce platforms, leveraging ONDC. Finally, building brand India through targeted global awareness campaigns is seen as important for promoting quality, reliability, moving beyond just price competitiveness. And tying this all back to our first section, this entire export and manufacturing ambition is fundamentally underpinned by the skilled workforce we discussed. The strategy emphasizes training Indian professionals in sectors with global demand: healthcare, IT, construction, collaborating with countries facing labor shortages, aligning skill development with host country needs. It shows a direct, crucial link. Human capital feeds the export ambition.
Okay, so we've covered skilling the people, building the digital backbone, attracting investment, transforming finance, and now enhancing what India makes and sells. This manufacturing and trade strategy sounds like a comprehensive blueprint.
It is indeed presented that way, as a comprehensive blueprint for global economic integration. Through initiatives like the National Manufacturing Mission aiming to boost manufacturing's GDP share, targeted PLI schemes, MSME empowerment, digital trade infrastructure, smart trade facilitation. India is aiming to fundamentally transition from being primarily import-dependent in key areas to becoming a truly export-competitive nation. This multifaceted roadmap is designed to enhance economic resilience, foster innovation, and strategically position India as a global manufacturing leader by 2030, all aligned with that Viksit Bharat at 2047 vision.
Right. Transitioning from these broad strategies, the sources also give us a glimpse into specific, recently approved initiatives that kind of exemplify these directions. Let's dive into three key ones mentioned in the cabinet approval section, see how this plays out on the ground.
Absolutely. These cabinet decisions represent concrete steps, the how behind the what's. The first one highlighted is the incentive scheme for promotion of low-value BHEM UPI person-to-merchant transactions, specifically for the financial year 2024-25. The background provided is the truly exponential growth of India's digital payments ecosystem, particularly post-2016 demonetization, with UPI emerging as a global leader. UPI impressively crossed the milestone of 1,000 crore, that's 10 billion transactions per month in 2023. Phenomenal growth.
And why specifically target small merchants and these person-to-merchant or P2M transactions? Why the focus there?
Good question. The source explains that while UPI is widely used, there's a need to deepen its penetration, especially among small merchants, the backbone of India's retail economy. These small businesses can sometimes face barriers like potential merchant discount rate, MDR, charges for larger transactions, or technical hurdles limiting their full embrace of digital payments. This specific incentive scheme is designed to complement previous policies that mandated zero MDR for transactions using RuPay cards and BMUPI for certain values, specifically to encourage merchant acceptance without adding a cost burden to them for these small value payments.
So it makes it cheaper or even free for small shops to accept tiny digital payments.
That's the idea. The key features mentioned are quite specific, applicable from April 1st, 2024 to March 31st, 2025. Total financial outlay, 1,820 crore approved by the cabinet. Eligibility: P2M transactions initiated via BHIM UPI apps where the value is 2,000 or less. Targeting those micropayments at small vendors. The incentive rate: 0.15% of the transaction value, payable to the banks facilitating these transactions. And the payment mechanism is structured: 80% upfront to banks, 20% conditional on performance like low technical declines and high system uptime.
Performance metrics tied in. What are the anticipated benefits and broader significance of this scheme, according to the source? What are they hoping to achieve?
The benefits are seen across the ecosystem. For consumers, seamless, secure, cost-free digital payments, even for tiny purchases. For merchants, a direct financial incentive to accept UPI, potentially boosting digital transactions, quicker access to funds. For banks and third-party app providers, TPPs, encourages continued investment in UPI infrastructure. From a governance perspective, promotes deeper financial inclusion, especially for small businesses in semi-urban and rural areas, enhances transparency in the retail economy. The broader impact is supporting Digital India and the less cash economy push. It also encourages innovation within UPI, things like UPI 1233, Pay for Feature Phones, UPI Lite X for offline use. The scheme specifically aims to stimulate a transaction volume of 20,000 crore in FY 24-25 through these low-value P2M transactions.
Okay, a very targeted push for micro digital payments. What's the next cabinet approval highlighted?
Moving on, the next one is the Revised National Program for Dairy Development, and PDD. The background provided is significant. India is the world's largest milk producer. Dairying supports over 8 crore, 80 million rural households. A very large proportion are small and marginal farmers, and notably, a significant number are women, for whom dairying is often a primary source of income and empowerment. The NPD is a central sector scheme. Primary objective: modernize dairy infrastructure and supply chains across the country.
Modernizing the dairy sector.
Yeah.
What are the specifics of the revised scheme? More funding, broader reach.
Yes, the revised scheme highlights include a total financial outlay of 2,790 crore allocated for 2021-26. A key point is a recent enhancement of 1,000 crore to this outlay approved by the cabinet. So yes, increased investment. Coverage extends to all states and UTs, with a specific focus on enhancing dairy development in the northeastern region, NER, and hilly areas where infrastructure might be less developed. The source also notes the scheme's contribution to employment: over 30,000 direct and indirect jobs created so far. The scheme is structured around two main components. Component A focuses on essential dairy infrastructure: village milk testing labs for quality, bulk milk coolers at collection points to preserve milk, supporting dairy cooperatives, providing technical assistance in underserved regions, basically strengthening the physical chain. Component B focuses on cooperative development, DTC. This gets technical support from Japan's GI and is being implemented in 9 key dairy states, aiming to strengthen the cooperative structure.
Cooperatives are key in dairy, aren't they? And what outcomes have been achieved under this program so far, according to the source? What tangible results?
The source lists specific outputs. 51,777 village milk testing labs established, improving quality control at the grassroots. 5,123 bulk milk cooler units installed, with a combined chilling capacity of over 123 lakh liters per day. That reduces spoilage significantly. Additionally, 232 advanced adulteration detection labs set up for higher-level safety checks. Looking ahead, expected outcomes by 2026 are substantial: 12 lakh 1.2 million direct and indirect jobs, with the projection that 70% will be held by women.
70% women. That's a huge empowerment angle.
Absolutely highlighted as such. They also anticipate forming 10,000 new village-level dairy cooperatives. The strategic significance is clear: enhances milk quality, traceability, safety, aligns with White Revolution 2.0 goals, doubling farmers' income vision, facilitates women empowerment, strengthens value addition, and market linkages. But this raises the question: how does the government support livestock productivity more directly, beyond just infrastructure?
Good point. Better infrastructure needs better producing animals. Which leads us directly to the third specific cabinet approval mentioned: the revised Rashtriya Gokul Mission, RGM, focusing on breeds and productivity.
Exactly. The Rashtriya Gokul Mission's background is its focus on conserving and developing indigenous bovine breeds, promoting scientific breeding methods, enhancing milk productivity through interventions like artificial insemination, AI. The revised key provisions highlight increased financial commitment. Total outlay of 3,400 crore for 2021-26. New additions include a 35% capital subsidy for establishing heifer rearing centers, aiming to support rearing 15,000 high-quality heifers. There's also a 3% interest subvention on loans for procuring IVF heifers, incentivizing adoption of advanced reproductive tech like in vitro fertilization. The program's reach is extensive, covering 605 districts under its AI program. The source also emphasizes technological innovations within RGM. Scaling up AI coverage reportedly reached over 83.9 million animals. 22 operational IVF labs supported by the mission, resulting in over 2,500 calves born through IVF faster genetic improvement. Furthermore, promoting Atmanivar Technologies' indigenous solutions, like the Gao chip and Mais chip for genomic evaluation of indigenous cattle and buffaloes, and Gao Sort, an indigenous technology for producing sex-sorted semen, allowing farmers to choose to produce female calves, which are obviously more productive for milk.
Using tech like genomics and sex-sorted semen sounds quite advanced for improving livestock. And what are the outcomes and impact of the RGM highlighted? Is it working?
The outcomes mentioned are quite impactful nationally. Milk production in India up 63.55% over the last 10 years. Per capita availability of milk also up substantially, from 307 grams day to 471 grams day. Better availability. Overall livestock productivity increased by 26.34%. And the mission has reached a huge number of farmers, benefiting over 5.21 crore, 52.1 million farmers, directly or indirectly. The strategic importance is presented as multifaceted. Promotes sustainable livestock productivity via genetic improvement, emphasizing indigenous breeds contributes to climate-resilient farming, as they're often better adapted locally. Crucially, it builds Atmanivar in animal breeding and genomics by promoting indigenous research and tech development.
It's really interesting seeing how these specific schemes, digital payments, dairy, livestock, all connect back. You can see the threads linking to Digital India, PMFME for food processing, Skill India for capacity building, and ultimately Viksit Bharat.
Exactly. They demonstrate a clear pattern of convergence and targeted action. The BAM-UPI scheme boosts Digital India. NPDD and RGM connect with rural economy schemes beyond crops, synergize with fisheries programs. Capacity building in dairying and agri-fintech links to Skill India. And most importantly, all three, by empowering rural communities, boosting productivity, promoting digital financial inclusion, are highlighted as directly contributing to the economic empowerment and development goals for Viksit Bharat at 2047. These cabinet approvals show specific, tangible steps supporting inclusive growth, tech-driven development, and rural empowerment across multiple fronts.
Okay. Transitioning now from the economic, digital, and infrastructure focus, this last section from the source material seems quite different. It focuses on tribal culture and customary law. How does recognizing and preserving this fit into the overall picture of India moving towards a developed nation by 2047, alongside all the tech and manufacturing we've discussed?
That's an excellent question, and the source makes a crucial point here. It frames the recognition and integration of tribal customary law not as a separate, siloed issue, but as absolutely crucial for achieving genuinely inclusive governance, ensuring justice for all citizens, and fostering sustainable development in a multicultural nation like India. Tribal customary law is highlighted as being deeply embedded in the social, political, economic fabric of tribal communities. It's an essential aspect of their identity, an identity that has shown remarkable resilience and adaptability over centuries, despite significant external pressures.
So inclusion means including different legal traditions, too.
In essence, yes. The vision of a developed India by 2047 must, by definition, encompass and integrate the diverse social and cultural realities of all its citizens, including the significant tribal populations, ensuring their rights, traditions, and governance systems are respected and evolve in dialogue with modern legal frameworks.
It sounds like the history of how tribal law has been treated is important here. What was the colonial perception? How do they try to codify it?
Yes, the colonial era's approach is a key backdrop. The colonial administration generally took what the source calls a fragmentary approach. Their primary interest was often limited to administrative convenience or specific issues impacting revenue or control. They mostly focused on documenting and codifying aspects of civil matters, inheritance rules, property, land tenure, but often neglected or misunderstood tribal conceptions of criminal law and dispute resolution. Ethnographers and colonial officials did make documentation efforts. The source cites C.G. Crawford on Kuki customs, W.G. Archer on Santhal law, providing early records, though often viewed through a colonial lens. But here's where it gets really significant, with long-term impact. The source highlights the huge neglect, often outright suppression, of tribal customary rights over natural resources, their traditional rights over land, forests, water bodies. These weren't just economic assets, they were fundamental to tribal life, identity, community governance. Under colonial rule, these rights were largely subsumed under state revenue laws, forest laws, land settlement regulations that applied uniformly, often disregarding traditional tribal ownership and management systems.
So their connection to the land and resources was legally severed in many ways.
Often undermined, yes. Furthermore, the administrative recognition granted to tribal chiefs and headmen was often limited, providing them only restricted formal administrative and judicial authority within the colonial legal structure, undermining their traditional roles as custodians of customary law and order.
So the colonial approach was selective and often undermined core elements of tribal life. What happened after independence? What does the constitutional and post-colonial framework look like?
After independence, the Constitution of India provided crucial safeguards, formally recognizing tribal autonomy and rights through provisions like the 5th and 6th schedules. These schedules provide for special administrative arrangements in tribal majority areas, 5th schedule across central India, 6th schedule mainly in the northeast, aiming to protect tribal land rights, cultural customs, traditional local governance structures from being entirely overridden by mainstream laws. In 6th schedule areas, for instance, autonomous district councils were established, granting formal recognition and roles to traditional tribal institutions in local governance, justice administration within limits, resource management.
So constitutional protection exists. Were there efforts to document these laws better post-independence?
Yes, beyond the constitutional framework, The post-colonial period saw more focused codification initiatives, as mentioned. The Law Research Institute in Guwahati, Assam, has been notable in documenting and codifying laws of Northeast tribes like Garo, Wancho, Riang, Mizo. The Indian Law Institute studied Khasi and Goro laws. The Anthropological Survey of India, ASI, undertook a major survey of 70 tribal communities across regions to assess their customary law, dispute resolution, social norms, providing valuable documentation.
What are the key features of tribal customary law itself, as highlighted? What makes it distinct from, say, the formal legal system?
The source highlights several key features. Firstly, institutional authority. Enforcement often rests with traditional institutions like tribal councils, village elders, chiefs and council. Legitimacy comes from community acceptance, tradition. Secondly, the scope is broad within tribal life. Marriage, kinship, inheritance, property, but also witchcraft, community resource management, dispute resolution, maintaining social order. A key characteristic is its flexibility and resilience. Unlike rigid, codified state laws, tribal customary laws are often based on evolving principles, adapting over time through community consensus. That's why they've survived. There's also coexistence with state laws. In many areas, customary and statutory systems operate alongside each other, sometimes complementing, sometimes conflicting. The source gives an example from Manipur, where the traditional village headman is also the ex officio chairman of the statutory village authority, a hybrid model. Finally, gender issues are touched upon. Historically, many tribal customary laws were patriarchal, particularly regarding inheritance and leadership, but these are subject to ongoing change due to external influences, constitutional principles, internal reform movements. But despite constitutional safeguards and documentation, the source also delves into the contemporary relevance and challenges. There are inherent tensions: autonomy versus assimilation, encroachment by state laws, especially on land rights, forest management, and increasingly gender equality where statutory norms challenge customary practices. Modern influences Hinduism, Christianity, internal reform movements continue to impact and alter customary practices. The existence of dual structures like statutory panchayats alongside traditional tribal councils can cause friction over jurisdiction, though they also offer potential for hybrid governance. Crucially, the source argues for the continued need for codification, systematic documentation, formal recognition, respecting diversity is necessary for protection and integration within the broader legal framework.
So it's a complex picture. Historical impact, constitutional protection, ongoing evolution, challenges from state law, and modern influences. Given all that, what does the way forward suggested in the source material look like for tribal customary law?
The source outlines several key approaches for the future. Strengthening tribal institutions is crucial, empowering traditional bodies to administer justice according to their customs, mediate disputes effectively. Gender-sensitive reforms are called for, encouraging communities to revise customary laws toward gender equality while respecting cultural context. Participatory codification is strongly emphasized. The process must involve the tribal communities themselves, reflecting living traditions, getting their buy-in, not being externally imposed. Capacity building is needed for tribal leaders, elders, youth-enhancing legal literacy, understanding rights under both systems, engaging effectively in governance. Finally, promoting legal pluralism is suggested, fostering constructive coexistence between formal state legal systems and informal tribal legal systems, recognizing multiple valid legal orders can operate within one nation. To conclude this section, the source material presents tribal customary law as a dynamic living tradition embodying the worldview, justice mechanisms, and social order of India's diverse tribal communities. Recognizing, protecting, enabling the evolution of these laws in dialogue with constitutional values is seen as fundamentally essential for inclusive development, social justice, and sustaining India's rich multicultural identity towards 2047. They're not static relics, but resilient, evolving frameworks central to tribal identity and well-being. This raises that important question: how does preserving and respectfully evolving these unique legal systems contribute to the overarching vision of a developed India that's prosperous, not just economically, but also socially just and culturally vibrant?
Wow, that was a truly deep dive across a vast and interconnected landscape. Really covered a lot of ground, from the ground level skilling initiatives and the massive digital inclusion efforts reaching farmers and small merchants, through the shifts in finance, manufacturing, investment, attracting global attention, all the way to the vital aspect of recognizing and enabling the evolution of tribal culture and customary law. These sources really paint a picture of India pursuing development on multiple fronts simultaneously. It's quite something.
Exactly. What's fascinating here, I think, is how seemingly distinct areas like incentivizing low-value digital payments, modernizing dairy development, or engaging with tribal customary law are all presented within the context of achieving national goals like Viksit Bharat at 2047. It really suggests an integrated approach, recognizing that building a truly developed nation isn't just about hitting high GDP numbers or technological advancement in isolation. It's fundamentally about empowering all citizens, building robust physical and digital infrastructure that reaches everyone, fostering a dynamic economy that participates globally, and crucially, preserving and respecting the diverse social and cultural fabric of the nation while embracing modernity.
So what does this all mean for you, listening in? As you process this information, maybe heading into a meeting about India's economic trajectory, or just reflecting on what's happening. Think about how these pieces connect. How does that farmer using AI in Baramati, highlighted in the sources, relate to India attracting significant global investors, or to a woman in a remote village getting financial services through her local post office because of digital infrastructure? How does the effort to recognize and update tribal legal traditions fit into a rapidly digitally transforming economy aiming for global manufacturing leadership? It's all intertwined, isn't it?
It seems to be. And this raises an important question, maybe a final thought for you to consider further as you think about this complex picture. How can India continue to balance the imperative for rapid economic and technological modernization with the equally crucial need to ensure that growth is genuinely inclusive? That it reaches every citizen, regardless of location or background, and respects the diverse social and cultural fabric of the nation? Is achieving that balance across all these simultaneous initiatives the ultimate challenge and perhaps the true definition of developed by 2047?
A lot to think about indeed. We hope this deep dive into the sources has given you some valuable insights and maybe a few aha moments.
Knowledge is most valuable when understood and applied. Keep exploring.